I come here because I live in Jerusalem and I am in shock and enraged about what is happening here.
No democracy without freedom to demonstrate.
There's not a very clear line between religion and nationalism. Unfortunately, I even have to say this as a religious person, together they can be a very volatile and dangerous mix. I find here is the worst possible combination of nationalism and religion.
No, because you guys are a bunch of Nazis. Go back to Germany. You know what? We don't need Nazis here.
You hear that? Nazi. A Jew, a religious Jew calling another Jew a Nazi. That's the way they react. Nazi. That's a word that Jews don't use against others.
This is my home.
Go home.
This is my land. Go back to America.
Criminal.
Make America. This is my home. This is my home. Push out. Push out. Push out. Hey.
In 1967, Israel conquered the West Bank, Gaza, and Arab East Jerusalem. And still today, the Palestinians live under military Israeli control. This is a film about 4 Israelis who want an end to more than 40 years of Israeli occupation.
Breaking the Silence is a group of ex-Israeli soldiers who served during the Second Intifada in the occupied territories. And today we work to try to expose the reality of occupation back home.
We call it breaking the silence because you have to understand that what's going on in the occupied territories is like one of the biggest taboos in Israel. People just don't talk about it. You don't come back home and say, hey, mommy, these are 2 Palestinians we killed last night. It just doesn't come over. That people back home, people there in Israel, have no clue of what's going on there. It's like there's this secret agreement between civil society and the military. We know there's something going on there, but please don't bring it back home. You know, we want to live our life without knowing what it takes to have our peaceful life.
We're here just to talk about what we did as soldiers, because we feel this is one of the most important pieces from the puzzle that is missing in a discussion and debate here in this area. We try to talk about the small stories that make the big problem, that make the big picture. Try to talk about what does it mean occupation, how does it look on a daily basis. How do you do it as an occupier?
40 years of occupation. According to the UN, there are today more than 500 checkpoints and obstacles in the West Bank, where the Israeli soldiers control and hinder Palestinians. The biggest checkpoint is located between Ramallah and East Jerusalem on occupied land. The checkpoint is called Kalandia.
We are a group of Israeli women, and we realized that nobody knows what's going on. So we decided to create a group that's going to the checkpoints and observes and reports. That's why the observing eye is part of our logo. Even our badge says that we are opposed to occupation. Our presence here is a clear statement that we are opposed to occupation. It's a statement for the army, for the police, for the border police, for anybody, and for the Palestinians to know that there are people who are actively opposing the occupation.
Dialysis. He needs dialysis 3 times a week. Do you understand? It's 3 times a week. There is nothing to do if the boy is sick. He has got to Shar Zadek hospital. It's every time the same problem with getting a child to hospital. It can't go on like this. Why do they do this?
They're doing it on purpose. They won't let anyone in. Everybody here is ill, and those that aren't, soon will be.
Yes, it's true.
And you can see how they are all the time finding out ways how to control what's going on more and more. So this Kalandia checkpoint sees something like 4,000 people. It was built for letting 1,000 people through. So first of all, this tremendous stress and tension of people who go to work every single day and have to stand here for 2 hours. It's making it difficult for Palestinians who live in this area, who are so-called Jerusalem residents. The other group of people who come through the checkpoints are Palestinians who have permits to go through, to either go through to work or to go through to hospital, to see doctors, to go to pray, to visit sick relatives, to go to weddings, or to go to get permits. So you have to queue at the checkpoint to be able to go to the office which issues permits.
Put all your bags in the machine.
In addition to checkpoints and obstacles, Israel has built so-called settlements in the West Bank and in East Jerusalem. According to the UN, there are today more than 500,000 Israelis living on occupied land. These settlements are all illegal according to international law. Palestinian farmers can access less and less of their land as the settlements expand. Frequently, there's violence when soldiers or settlers stop the farmers from cultivating their land. Rabbi Eric Asherman helps the Palestinian farmers.
You all have to leave. I am asking you. We do not have time for this.
Where's the red line?
Please leave now.
Where does it end?
Go. Here. Everything here is a closed military zone.
Where? Here? There? How many meters from here?
Everywhere.
We believe that one of the most basic commandments of Judaism, what we read in the very first verses of the Bible, is that all human beings are created b'tselem Elokim, in God's image. And it doesn't say just Jews or non-Jews or just rich or poor, and it makes a point of saying both men and women. If we really believe that, if we were trying to internalize that, then we have to honor and protect the human rights of every human being, including Palestinians.
Eric Asherman's interpretation of the Bible is rare in Israel. The Palestinian olive trees are standing on biblical land and on biblical hills. This land is God's land, promised to the Jewish people, according to the settlers.
Yesterday they came when I got back here at 4 p.m. They came and stole the ladder. They stole the black covers, like those. They stole these. They stole cutters and knives. And the olives, over there. Did you see the olives?
Did the settlers do this?
Yes, the settlers stole olives and did this. I have been away for 3 days. They stole everything. They did this. They stole covers and tools and did this with the olives.
So when you came back, everything was gone?
Yes, they are thieves.
For several years, Rabbi Eric Asherman has protected Palestinian farmers when they are being harassed or attacked by religious Jewish settlers.
That's what you're doing, giving me the finger. He's lifting his hands to fight. Arrest him now! Arrest him now! An Arab giving the finger to a Jew should have his hand cut off.
Oh, now we've gone completely crazy. Coming here to guard the Arabs?
How often I've heard soldiers say, well, the high court's there, we're here. Our presence here is what's essential. Not only sometimes we actually act as human shields, physically to stand between Palestinians and people threatening them. And sometimes it's important that we're here to keep the army honest, to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing.
The settlers are protected by Israeli soldiers, and the soldiers themselves are sometimes settlers.
There's a settler up here named Yedidia who often comes down, and when anyone tries to work here, he tries to stop them. But this time apparently he sent the army.
The strategy for the settlers is to take over hill after hill of the West Bank. They do it by building small outposts and then expanding downhill, closer to the Palestinian farmers.
Legally, they can't cross this line.
I would also like to see this document of his. They came up with this line 1 year ago. They tried the same trick last year, but in the end the farmers worked here. If you don't like it, take your questions to the coordination office.
Simply this attempt to slowly take over another dunam here. From their point of view, this is redeeming the land of Israel, and they'll do it by any means possible, piece by piece. And we're trying in some way to help Palestinians hang on and even get some of their lands back. We always go by the cues of the Palestinian. The army wants control. They want no Palestinian to go anywhere without a permit.
I know.
All right, I can't. You have to make the choices, the best way to hold on to your land. And we back you whatever you do.
My paper is okay.
Yes.
And I will back here after 2 days.
Okay.
But he didn't.
They acknowledged that this was his land, and now they said, we don't want you to work here today, though, because it's dangerous. Someone could come and shoot you. There's a good chance that we will win here in the end. Maybe it'll be easier to finish if there's no attention here on another day or something like this.
In the West Bank, Israel has built a barrier, or wall, made out of fences and concrete. It is part of Israel's defense. It protects settlements and it ties them closer to Israel. The barrier, or the wall, is mainly built on occupied land, in breach of international law according to the International Court of Justice. For the Palestinians in the West Bank, the wall results in further land loss to Israeli settlers. But there are Israelis helping the Palestinians to resist the construction of the wall.
What we're doing here right now is trying to block the path of the wall and trying to disrupt the construction that will resume tomorrow somewhat. We're standing at the path of the wall right now. There's we're about 4 or 5 kilometers into the West Bank, outside of Israel's internationally recognized border. The International Court of Justice in The Hague ruled that this path, the construction of this barrier is illegal, but Israel continues building it. Right now we're in a village called Ne'alin. 2,500 dunams are about to be confiscated from the village.
اسحب شوي اسحب شوي
Jonathan Pollack has participated in direct actions and demonstrations for many years, several times a week. He has been arrested and physically injured by Israeli soldiers.
He's done nothing wrong! Stop hurting him! Stop hurting him! Stop pushing her!
It's a very big part of my life, and in the aspect of fighting it. I live here, and my life pretty much revolves around political activism. So obviously the political situation affects my life and my future and my past. Two people have been killed here due to military violence. All resistance here is completely popular, completely civilian. There's never been guns used from the side of the village, from the side of the demonstrators. Nevertheless, the army reacts to these demonstrations, to this uprising, as if it was a military uprising with military tools. And as I said, two people have already been killed here.
Demonstrations against the wall often turn violent. They quickly erupt with stone throwing and gunfire. It is mostly the protesters who are seriously injured. Sometimes protesters get killed.
I believe that it's my duty as an Israeli. What's happening here is completely immoral, and it's being done in our name as Israelis, whether we agree with it or not. Our moral obligation is to come here and stand with the people. It's not enough to say that you oppose something your government is doing. When such crimes are being committed, I expect people, and I think it's our duty, to come here and actively resist it.
There are soldiers over there. You will be surrounded. Move, boys. Come to the east. Do not go west. Boys, get back here. Are we going that way? Just go straight. Are we out of rocks? Is everything quiet here?
Are you Joshua? No? Okay, I must have mixed you up with someone else.
What organization are you from?
Checkpoint Watch.
So you don't want any more checkpoints?
No, but...
Oh, less checkpoints then.
At this stage we are against checkpoints and we are here.
So what about the checkpoints?
Look at Huwara checkpoint. It costed millions.
So you want something respectable? To let everybody in?
Huwara checkpoint cost 15 millions out of our pockets, and then they closed it.
It does not matter. Here we have the entrance to the country.
It should be at the entrance on Israel's border, not here.
So write a letter, no to checkpoints.
We have already done that.
Lady, have a nice day. We need people like you to keep calm. Tell them to get in line. One by one. Closer to the wall. Line up one by one. Stick close to the wall.
I've been coming to Kalandia for 7 years, so when it comes to Ramadan, it's important for me to know what's going on. So although it's not even my shift time, I decided to come and have a look. The problem is that when you meet the individual people with the individual problems, your heart just breaks, you know, that for some stupid reason that you didn't bring your original birth certificate for your 16-year-old daughter, but only a photocopy. It's crazy, you know. It's not only crazy, it's very painful to think that there are so many rules and that if you don't fit into the category, then nothing helps.
Of course you will be able to pray. Just go over there and they will check everything in the computer.
People are trying their damnedest, you know, to get into Jerusalem because it's such a holy place and it's so important. The army and the authorities behave as if they didn't know, you know, and treat them as naughty people, not obeying the rules, you know, ignoring the rules. Ramadan Karim. Khawajas, that's what we are.
They are looking at She's 45 years old. Okay, you're 45 years old. You know, life must have been hard for her. We are not allowed to go and pray, but nothing prevents us from praying.
Move next to the wall, all of you.
Why?
What do you mean, why? Move, one by one. Go back.
We're here to tell you how you conduct an occupation.
If the Palestinians will be afraid that the IDF is all the time everywhere, they'll be afraid to attack us. So what do you do to give them the feeling? You make your presence felt. Afghanat nochechut. That's, I would say, 60 to 70% of what I did as a combat soldier in the occupied territories was to do with deterrence. With, you know, doing what we call making our presence felt. You go out, shoot some bullets to the hair, knock on some doors, run to the other corner and take another house. Just to let the Palestinian feel that we control the city, we are the bosses. We know what's going on. We are everywhere all the time. When you're discharged, you understand this is a way to occupy civil society, civilians. It's not talking about guarding the borders of Israel. You know, when I joined the army, I went, to protect my country. It's talking about protecting 500 settlers inside a Palestinian city.
In Hebron, well inside the West Bank, lives 150,000 Palestinians and 500 Israeli settlers. Nowhere else is the hatred between Palestinians and Israelis more palpable than here. The settlers have taken over central parts of Hebron, where Palestinians are hindered from moving freely. Checkpoints, military installations, concrete blocks, and Israeli soldiers are omnipresent. In Hebron, one finds the most extreme and aggressive Israeli settlers.
There is no Palestine. Everything is Israel. Arabs, get off!
The settler children are protected by Israeli soldiers, and parents often encourage their young to attack Palestinians. The patriarch Abraham is said to be buried in Hebron. The city is one of the holiest places in Judaism.
One must realize that Hebron historically has always been a Jewish city. King David founded his kingdom here in Hebron. Our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac and Jacob and their wives are all buried here in Hebron, so it has been a Jewish place for thousands of years. This state is a Jewish state, and we are here to stay, because 4,000 years ago, God promised this land to the Jewish family. We have a divine right to this land, neither through war nor violence, but as a gift from God.
You're a traitor! May your name be forgotten!
Hello there, we are from Jerusalem.
Today, Yehuda Shaul, the former soldier in Hebron, informs journalists, diplomats and others about the situation in Hebron.
If someone is willing to listen, if someone is willing to see reality, I don't have the right not to take him there. The reason why I wake up in the morning and I go to sleep at night, and then the next morning I wake up and still do what I do, is because I don't have another option. Because if I'm not part of the solution, I'm part of the problem. I can't do it in a different way. I can't do it in a different place. Israel is my home. This is where I live. I just don't see for myself another option.
Yehuda Shaul, you are a traitor. You are a terrorist. Jewish blood is on your hands. You should be ashamed. You are a criminal. Yehuda, look at this boy. Would you be happy if something happened to him? Leave, you murderer.
When I was a soldier in Hebron, when I served in Hebron, we used to say, cynically, but that's a sign that we understood that something is wrong in this reality. We used to say that in Israel, people shouldn't get the right to vote before they visit Hebron.
Once you understand Hebron, once you confront Hebron, you are confronted with the most important question. And that is, what do you choose? The land of Israel or the state of Israel? Whether what is important is equality, democracy, rights, or land. And the settlers are afraid that people will pick the state of Israel above the land of Israel.
Yehuda Shaul, now you are with the Europeans who also sponsor Hamas. You sold your family.
Unfortunately, throughout history, religion and nationalism, not just Judaism, have been a part of the problem. They've been part of what leads to bloodshed and countless, from my point of view, desecrations of God's name. The Judaism that I grew up with teaches me something different, that Judaism has to be part of the solution. When I first spent time here and started to realize that the vast majority of religious Jews in this country understand Judaism in a way so different from what I learned from my rabbis and my teachers and my parents and my family, there are times when I say, well, maybe I'm the crazy one, but then you go back to the sources and you see what's there. And now, it is true, of course, that if you look in the Bible, you cannot escape the fact that God promises the entire land of Israel, including the West Bank, the occupied territories, to the Jewish people in perpetuity. But that same biblical theology makes it very clear, and you see that in the Bible, you see it in the prophets, in the Torah itself, that how much of that land we will be living on at any given point in history will expand or contract according to our moral behavior. And so there may be a paradox here, that the very acts that are necessary to continue the occupation are the very ones that make us morally unfit to be there. As holy as the land of Israel is, human life is more holy. So if you can prevent bloodshed by territorial compromise, as painful as it is to give up part of the places that are so connected to our history, to God's promise, to the places where our kings and prophets walked, human life, with hands down, trumps. It's so much more important.
The majority of the Palestinian struggle is civilian. It's an insurrection. When a child throws a stone at a soldier, it is justified. When you wage a war against the civilian population with an army, it is incredibly stupid to believe that the violence is not gonna blow back at you at some point. I'm not gonna tell you that it's right or legitimate or moral to blow up a bus with civilians. But if you wanna bomb Gaza and kill 1,400 people in a month, and you want to expect that this will have no effect in Tel Aviv, you have to be either extremely naive or extremely stupid. Sometimes, in some cases, you choose unjust means because they're the only means that you have. I'm not in that situation. I can tell you, I do not support suicide attacks. But I'm not in the position where I have, luckily I'm not in the position where I have to make that choice. In my position, I make my choice, and it is to support the civilian insurrection of Palestinians against Israeli oppression. Violence definitely does have an effect. I mean, I think you'd have to be very naive to claim that you exist in a very violent situation where a lot of very extreme violence is directed towards you and your environment and the people you care about, and to say that it doesn't affect you. Obviously, everyone's afraid to die and is afraid to get hurt, but being part of something, of a struggle worth dying for, is something worth living for.
Get out of here!
There is one very sensitive issue for Israeli peace activists: family discussion about the occupation. Rarely, if ever, are outsiders allowed to know about sensitive political discussions within the family.
My mother has her activities, which I'm in favor of. I mean, I don't think that Mahsoum Watch is a bad organization. They're there to try and help the The roadblocks would be more humane.
And and as a political statement to oppose occupation. It says so on our tag. You can't always blame them. You know, because our settlers are perceived by the Palestinian people exactly like we perceive Hamas. Our settlers say, never will we leave.
I didn't say the situation was easy. I said that when I look at my son and I imagine him when he's 18, I don't think the situation will be solved.
They say the Arabs can be there without any human rights, you know, they can live there.
That's something else, but they can be there. Hamas says, you can't be here.
Okay.
No rights, no nothing.
Well,
get out of here. There's a jihad against us.
December 2008, Israel attacks the Gaza Strip. 1,400 Palestinians and 13 Israelis are killed. Most of the casualties are civilians. Breaking the Silence has interviewed several Israeli soldiers, giving testimony about abuse and excessive use of force.
This is a testimony of 1, 2, 3, 4, 500 people. One after the other, this is what they've done. Abusing Palestinians on a daily basis, looting, destroying property, killing, whatever comes up in the testimonies. You can come from a different world and then start to describe the stories as war crimes, as that. I know one thing. This is what we've done.
Testimonies about excessive use of force are met with silence and denied in Israel.
I don't think silence is an Israeli disease. Silence is a human sickness. Okay, we're not when you don't look good, you don't confront a mirror. We prefer to continue our life without noise.
Supporters of this war, you are killing children.
Shame on you! Shame on you!
Nobody shouts, nobody cries. We refuse to be murderers.
You're all traitors! You're all traitors!
Shame on you! Shame on you!
The Israeli attack on Gaza, according to the Israeli press, was supported by 90% of the Israelis. Jonathan Pollack participates in several demonstrations against the Gaza war.
Oppressing the population is a war crime. People are dying.
Traitors! Traitors! Death to Arabs! We spit on the Palestinian flag.
I think you have to understand that this element of Israeli society does exist, the fascist, extreme right, and it's growing and it's strengthening. But there really is a democracy for Jews in Israel. It's being limited more and more with time, but as we speak now, there really is a democracy for Jews in Israel. But it's not really a democracy, it's an ethnocracy. Because if you're Jewish, you have certain democratic rights, and if you're not Jewish, these rights are much lessened. And if you're a Palestinian resident of the occupied territories, you're under a completely different legal system.
Israeli right-wing extremists and nationalists from the organization Im Tirtzu are demonstrating against Jonathan Pollack and other activists. during a demonstration against the wall. Members of Im Tirzu encouraged soldiers to shoot anti-wall protesters in the head.
Come on, guys, use live ammunition. Give them one in the head. Go to hell. Get out of here.
We are here to protest against the violence of the anarchists. The anarchists are both Israeli and international activists. They call themselves peace activists. They have nothing to do with peace. They don't want peace. They are about anarchy, and that's it.
Occupation is a very bad word. I mean, of course they use this word because it's a very extreme terminology. We're not occupants. We're not occupants.
Currently, as we speak, I'm facing 6 indictments, and I've faced 3 more before. Either I get acquitted or I get convicted. Either I stay free or I spend some time in jail. We'll see. It's part of reality. If you want to sit at home and not do anything, it's understandable. But if you want to get out, and I think for one to live, you have to get out and do something about what you see in the world around you, then here and now, this is what we have.
My concern is whether something fits within my moral boundaries or not. Is that people who have done very, very bad things don't have horns. They look like me. They look like you. You know, I fired every night dozens of grenades into neighborhoods where people live. I use Palestinians as human shields. You know, all the things that I can tell you, and then you'll be shocked. It's me, and we're sitting now in the same room. If you want to put in jail every Israeli soldier who abused the Palestinians, so all my generation should go to jail. Stand in one long line, left, right, marching into jail. Because we all did this in different levels and different ways and different, you know. But no one who was there came out clean. No one who served there has clean hands.
Welcome to the future, bringing you the latest in science and technology.